I never expected being a stepmother would be easy, but I never imagined it would lead to this. My husband Jack brought his 5-year-old daughter Emma to live with us 3 months ago. Since day one, she barely touched her food. Every night, the same sad eyes looked up at me. "Sorry, Mom, I am not hungry," she would whisper as her untouched plate was cleared away. Jack just shrugged. "She will get used to it," he said. But I watched her grow thinner each day. When Jack left for his business trip, Emma finally approached me. "Mom, I need to tell you something." Her whispered words made my heart stop. I picked up the phone and called the police immediately. Jack and I met at a small coffee shop in downtown Portland 2 years ago. I was working on my graphic design freelance project when he sat down at the table next to mine. A coffee spill and a borrowed napkin later, we were deep in conversation. His confidence was magnetic, his smile genuine. He talked about his work as a pharmaceutical sales representative, his love of hiking, and his dream to start his own business someday. 3 months into our relationship, Jack mentioned he had a daughter who lived with his ex-wife Stephanie. "She has custody now because of my travel schedule," he explained casually over dinner one night. But Stephanie is not exactly mother of the year material. When he proposed 6 months later, I was overjoyed. I had always wanted a family, and the idea of being a stepmother to a little girl filled me with excitement. I bought parenting books and spent hours browsing online forums about blended families. I wanted to get everything right. The weekend after our small courthouse wedding, I transformed our spare bedroom into a space for a little girl. Soft yellow walls, a bookshelf filled with stories, and a hand-painted growth chart. I wanted Emma to feel welcome whenever she would visit. "Kylie," Jack said one evening, his voice unusually tight. "There has been a change of plans. Stephanie has some personal issues she needs to deal with. Emma will be coming to live with us, tomorrow." The suddenness caught me off guard, but I was secretly thrilled. I had been looking forward to building a relationship with my stepdaughter, and now I would have the chance sooner than expected. When Jack brought Emma home the next day, the little girl who walked through our door was nothing like the smiling child I had seen in photos. Her blonde hair hung limply around a pale face. Her eyes, so much like her father's, were wary and ringed with shadows no 5-year-old should have. "Emma, this is Kylie, your new mom," Jack introduced me with a forced brightness. "Hello, Emma," I said gently, kneeling down to her level. "I am so happy you are going to be living with us." She stared at me without speaking, then looked at the floor. That first dinner was an introduction to what would become our nightly routine. I had prepared what Jack told me was her favorite meal: spaghetti with meatballs. Emma sat at the table, her legs dangling from the chair, and stared at her plate without moving. "Sweetie, do you not like spaghetti?" I asked. She glanced quickly at her father, then back at her plate. "Sorry, Mom, I am not hungry." Jack twirled pasta around his fork with casual indifference. "Do not make a big deal about it, Kylie. She is just adjusting. She will eat when she is hungry." Over the next 2 weeks, I tried everything. Pancakes shaped like animals, sandwiches with the crusts cut off, colorful vegetables arranged in smiley faces. Nothing worked. Each meal ended the same way, with Emma pushing her barely touched plate away and Jack dismissing my concerns. One afternoon while Jack was at work, and Emma was supposed to be napping, I heard a strange shuffling sound coming from her room. I quietly opened the door to find her frantically trying to shove something under her bed. When she saw me, her eyes widened with fear. "Emma, what are you doing, sweetie?" She shook her head and backed away from me. I gently looked under the bed and discovered several plastic bags containing moldy food. Pieces of bread, half-eaten apples, cheese crusts. My heart sank. This went beyond normal adjustment issues. Emma was hiding food in her room rather than eating it. That evening, I waited until Emma was asleep before bringing it up with Jack. "I found food hidden in her room today," I said. "Jack, I am really worried about her. She is barely eating anything. Maybe we should talk to her pediatrician?" His expression darkened so quickly, it made me step back. "Jesus, Kylie, you are overreacting. She is playing you like a fiddle. Kids do this kind of manipulation all the time. But she is losing weight. I can see it." "She is fine," he snapped. "Stop trying to find problems where there are not any. I have been a parent a lot longer than you have." That night, I was awakened by screams coming from Emma's room. I rushed in to find her thrashing in bed, tears streaming down her face. "Please do not make me eat it," she sobbed, still half asleep. "Please. I will be good." I gathered her into my arms, feeling her tiny shoulder blades, sharp as wings against my hands. "Shh. It is okay, Emma. No one is going to make you eat anything." Over her head, I saw Jack standing in the doorway, his face unreadable in the darkness. "She will get over it," he said flatly, and went back to bed. As I held Emma's trembling body, I knew in my heart that something was very wrong. This was not just a child adjusting to a new home. This was a child who was afraid. By the 1-month mark of Emma living with us, I had started keeping a journal documenting her eating habits and physical changes. As a graphic designer working from home, I was with her more than Jack was, and what I observed troubled me deeply. Emma would occasionally accept small bites of certain foods, plain toast, bananas, or plain pasta with nothing on it. But the moment Jack would join us for meals, she would stop eating entirely. I began to notice a pattern. When Jack was around, her anxiety spiked visibly. Her small hands would tremble, and she would steal glances at him between long periods of staring at her plate. The weight loss was becoming impossible to ignore. Her clothes hung on her tiny frame, and the pediatrician's growth chart I had been secretly maintaining showed she had lost 6 pounds since moving in a significant amount for a child her size. I spent hours researching childhood eating disorders, psychological impacts of divorce on children, and ways to help picky eaters. I tried everything the articles suggested. I involved Emma in meal preparation. I never forced her to eat. I created a relaxed atmosphere around food. I offered many small meals throughout the day, instead of 3 large ones. There were brief moments of progress. She accepted a few bites of peanut butter toast one morning, when Jack had already left for work, and I celebrated these small victories privately. 3 weeks into the school year, I scheduled a meeting with Emma's kindergarten teacher, Miss Winters, hoping to get some insight. "Emma is very withdrawn," Miss Winters told me. "She rarely speaks to the other children, and often does not eat her lunch. But the school records from her previous kindergarten show a very different child." Her former teacher described her as talkative and well-adjusted, with a healthy appetite. "Did her previous records mention any eating issues?" I asked. Miss Winters shook her head. "None at all. In fact, there is a note here that she particularly enjoyed snack time, and was always the first to raise her hand to be snack helper." This information felt like a missing puzzle piece. Whatever was happening with Emma had started recently, possibly around the time she came to live with us. That evening, I carefully broached the subject with Jack. "I spoke with Emma's teacher today. I began as we cleaned up after another tense dinner where Emma had eaten exactly 3 bites before saying she was not hungry. She mentioned Emma was different at her old school, that she used to eat normally." Jack's jaw tightened. "You went to talk to her teacher without telling me?" "I am just trying to understand what is happening with her, Jack. I am worried. You know what your problem is, Kylie? You cannot accept that you are not her real mother. You have been trying to force this relationship from day one, and Emma senses that. She is pushing back because you are pushing too hard." His words stung, but I pressed on. "I think we should consider taking her to therapy. Something traumatic might have happened, maybe with the transition or—" "Absolutely not," Jack interrupted, his voice rising. "No daughter of mine is going to be labeled as having problems. Therapy at her age would do more harm than good." "But Jack—" I said no. He slammed his hand on the counter so hard that a glass jumped and toppled over, shattering on the floor. I flinched at the sound. "This discussion is over. Let it go, Kylie." The next day, Jack announced that his mother would be coming for a visit. "Mom raised 3 kids," he said. "She will tell you that you are overthinking this whole eating thing." Beverly Hamilton arrived like a hurricane in designer clothes, full of opinions and backhanded compliments. "The house looks nice, considering how little time you have had to settle in," she told me within minutes of arriving. She made it clear that she had adored Jack's first wife, and viewed me as a questionable replacement. During dinner, Emma's plate sat untouched as usual. "Not hungry again, sweetheart?" Beverly asked, eyeing the scene with suspicion. Sorry, Grandma, Emma whispered. I am not hungry. Beverly turned to me with accusation in her eyes. What exactly are you feeding this child? She is skin and bones. Before I could respond, Jack jumped in. Kylie tries, Mom, but she has some unusual ideas about nutrition. She keeps pushing these elaborate meals when Emma just wants simple food. I sat in stunned silence. It was the exact opposite of reality. I had been the one advocating for letting Emma eat whatever basic foods she would accept, while Jack insisted on serving her the same full meals we ate. Well, Beverly said, patting my hand condescendingly, parenting does not come naturally to everyone. Perhaps you should listen more to Jack. He knows his daughter. That night, after Beverly went to the guest room and Jack was in the shower, I found Emma in her room, drawing with crayons. Usually, her drawings were of houses or flowers, typical kindergarten art. But this picture made my blood run cold. A small figure sat at a table with a large plate in front of them. Standing over the small figure was a tall, dark shape. The small figure had tears drawn on their face. At the bottom of the page, in wobbly kindergarten letters, Emma had written dinner time. Emma, can you tell me about your picture? I asked gently. She quickly flipped it over. It is nothing. Is this about the dinners at our house? Her lower lip trembled, but she did not respond. From down the hall, I heard the shower turn off. You can tell me anything, Emma. I promise I want to help you. She looked toward the bathroom door, then shook her head. I cannot, she whispered. 2 days after Beverly left, still convinced I was the source of Emma's eating problems, I noticed Emma looking particularly pale during breakfast. When I reached out to feel her forehead, she swayed slightly. Do you feel okay, sweetie? Just tired, she murmured. I kept her home from school that day, and by afternoon, she could barely stand without getting dizzy. Her hair, once shiny and thick, had become dull, and was falling out in small clumps when I brushed it. This had gone beyond concerning, it was now terrifying. The call from Emma's school came 3 days later. Emma had fainted during morning circle time and was unresponsive. By the time I arrived at the school, an ambulance was already there. The paramedics were lifting a tiny, frighteningly still form onto a stretcher. She is severely dehydrated and showing signs of malnutrition, one of them told me, as they loaded her into the ambulance. Are you her mother? Stepmother, I corrected, climbing in beside her. Her father is at work. I will call him from the hospital. At the emergency room, the doctor's questions felt increasingly accusatory. How long has she been refusing food? Since she came to live with us about 2 months ago. And what steps have you taken to address this? I explained everything I had tried, the research I had done, the patterns I had noticed. The doctor's expression remained skeptical. Mrs. Hamilton, I am concerned that this situation has been allowed to progress to this point. We are looking at a case of moderate malnutrition. Emma's electrolytes are dangerously imbalanced, and she is showing early signs of organ stress. We will need to admit her immediately. Of course, whatever she needs. I should also inform you that in cases like this, we are obligated to consult with Child Protective Services. My heart pounded. I understand. When Jack arrived an hour later, it was as if a different man walked into the hospital room. Gone was the dismissive, sometimes frightening husband I had been living with. In his place was a concerned, charming father who knew exactly what to say. Doctor, my wife and I have been beside ourselves with worry, he said, shaking the doctor's hand firmly. We have tried everything we could think of, but Emma has struggled with food ever since her mother abandoned her. The doctor's demeanor softened visibly. These situations can be very complex, Mr. Hamilton. Children often express emotional trauma through eating behaviors. Exactly what I have been saying, Jack agreed, casting a brief glance at me that contained a clear warning. Kylie is new to parenting, and I am afraid she has been taking Emma's food refusal personally. I should have been more supportive of how difficult this transition has been for both of them. By the time the hospital nutritionist arrived to discuss a feeding plan, Jack had completely rewritten our home situation. According to him, I was a well-meaning but inexperienced stepmother who had been trying to force Emma to eat unfamiliar foods, while he had been advocating for patience and professional help all along. The nutritionist developed a carefully structured meal plan with small, frequent, nutrient-dense meals. Under the watchful eyes of the hospital staff, Emma began accepting tiny portions. Each small success was celebrated by the nurses, and for the first time in months, I saw Emma's eyes brighten slightly when she successfully finished a small cup of yogurt. "See?" Jack said loudly when the nutritionist was in the room. "This is exactly the approach I was suggesting we take at home." After 3 days, Emma was released with strict follow-up instructions and a referral to a pediatric nutritionist. The hospital social worker had interviewed both of us separately, and to my distress, seemed satisfied with Jack's explanation of events. The first few days at home seemed promising. Emma followed her meal plan under my careful supervision, and Jack appeared supportive. But I began noticing troubling new patterns. When I was out of the room, Jack would whisper things to Emma that I could not hear. After these whispered conversations, Emma's cooperation with her meal plan would deteriorate. One evening, I returned from the bathroom to find Emma's meal replacement shake untouched, and Emma looking frightened. "What happened?" "You were drinking it a minute ago," I asked. "I am sorry," she whispered, glancing at Jack. "I am not thirsty anymore." That night, I made a decision. While Jack was sleeping, I ordered a small nanny cam disguised as a clock and had it delivered to my friend Amanda's house to avoid Jack seeing the package. 3 days later, with the hidden camera in place on our kitchen bookshelf, I invented an errand that would take me out of the house for 30 minutes during Emma's afternoon snack time. When I reviewed the footage later while Jack was in the shower and Emma was napping, what I saw made me physically ill. The moment I left the house, Jack's demeanor changed completely. He sat down across from Emma, who was picking at her peanut butter crackers. "Remember our talk about being a good girl?" Jack said, his voice low but perfectly audible on the recording. Emma nodded, her eyes downcast. "Good girls finish their food without complaining. But they also remember the special rules, right?" Emma nodded again. "And what happens if you tell Kylie about our special rules?" "You will send me away," Emma whispered, "and I will never see you or Kylie again." "That is right. Now eat 2 crackers for me, and you can stop. But when Kylie comes home, you tell her you are not hungry anymore. Understand?" My hands shook as I stopped the recording. The loving father I thought I had married was systematically terrorizing his own daughter. But why? What possible motive could he have for wanting to control Emma's eating this way? That night, I confronted him. "I know what you are doing to Emma," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Jack looked up from his laptop with mild curiosity. "What am I supposedly doing now?" "You are manipulating her, telling her to refuse food, threatening to send her away, if she tells me." His expression changed so quickly it was chilling. The mask of the charming, patient father dropped entirely, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "You have always been too nosy for your own good, Kylie," he said quietly. "Always thinking you know better than me about my own daughter. Why would you do this to her? She ended up in the hospital, Jack. You are paranoid and you are hurting our family with these delusions," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Maybe you should talk to someone about your need to create drama. Emma has been doing much better since I stepped in to correct your approach to feeding her." I realized with a sinking feeling that Jack was gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt what I had seen with my own eyes. But the recording did not lie. "I am going to call Stephanie," I said. "I need to understand what was happening before Emma came here." Something dangerous flashed in Jack's eyes. "You will do no such thing. Stephanie is an addict who neglected our daughter. That is why Emma is with us now." But his reaction only strengthened my resolve. The next day, while Jack was at work and Emma was at school, I found Stephanie's contact information in Emma's school enrollment forms. The number went straight to voicemail. "This is Kylie Hamilton, Jack's wife," I said after the beep. "I am concerned about Emma's well-being and would really appreciate a chance to talk to you. Please call me back." To my surprise, Stephanie called back that same afternoon. "I have been trying to get visitation for months," she said, her voice nothing like the unstable addict Jack had described. "Jack convinced the judge that I was an unfit mother because I sought treatment for depression after my mother died. He twisted everything, used my therapy against me. He told me you had drug problems," I said, struggling to reconcile this articulate woman with Jack's descriptions. He would say that, she replied bitterly. Jack cannot stand not being in control. When I started standing up to him about his parenting methods, he began building a case against me. What parenting methods? I asked, my mouth dry. There was a long pause. Jack has very specific ideas about raising children. He believes in extreme measures to ensure obedience. When I objected to his disciplinary tactics with Emma, he threatened to take her away. I never imagined he would actually do it. That evening, Jack came home in a cold rage. "You called Stephanie?" he demanded the moment he walked in the door. "After I explicitly told you not to?" "How did you know?" I asked, then realized. "You are monitoring my phone. Someone needs to keep an eye on your destructive behavior," he said. "Pack your things. You are going to stay with your mother until you get your head straight. Emma and I will be fine without your interference." "I am not leaving Emma," I said firmly. Jack stepped closer to me, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Yes, you are. Because if you do not, I will make sure everyone knows that you are the one who has been starving her. I have friends at the hospital, at her school. Who do you think they will believe? A respected pharmaceutical rep who has lived in this community for years? Or a woman with a documented history of mental health issues?" "What history?" His smile was terrifying in its confidence. "The one that starts appearing in your medical records tomorrow." 2 days later, Jack announced he needed to go on a business trip. 3 days in Chicago, he said, packing his suitcase with methodical precision. It cannot be helped. The regional sales meeting was rescheduled. His sudden departure made me suspicious, especially after his threat to force me out of the house, but I was also relieved to have time alone with Emma without his looming presence. Before leaving, Jack pulled me aside. "Do not make things worse while I am gone," he warned. "Stick to Emma's meal plan exactly as written. Do not deviate. Do not ask her questions about me. And do not even think about contacting Stephanie again." The moment Jack's car pulled out of the driveway, a palpable change came over our home. The air itself seemed lighter, as if a storm cloud had moved on. Emma remained cautious, but I noticed her shoulders relaxing slightly as the hours passed without Jack's return. That first evening alone, I kept dinner simple and low pressure. I set out small portions of several foods the nutritionist had approved and sat with Emma at the table. "You can eat as much or as little as you want," I told her gently. "No pressure at all." Her eyes darted nervously around the kitchen, as if expecting Jack to appear suddenly. "He is really gone for 3 whole days?" she asked in a tiny voice. "Yes, sweetheart. It is just you and me, until Friday." Slowly, hesitantly, she reached for a piece of toast and took a small bite. Then another. By the end of the meal, she had eaten more than I had seen her consume voluntarily since she arrived. With this small breakthrough, I began creating a safe environment for Emma to heal. We read books together, colored pictures, and went for short walks in the neighborhood. I was careful never to pressure her about food, simply making it available in non-threatening forms. On the second day of Jack's absence, I discovered something disturbing. While cleaning up some files on our shared laptop, I found a hidden folder that showed Jack had been monitoring not just my phone calls but my internet searches and emails as well. He had installed tracking software that gave him complete access to my digital life. This explained how he always seemed to know what I was thinking and planning. That same day, Emma accepted a small bowl of soup for lunch, eating almost half before stopping. It was progress, but I could see how traumatized she still was, constantly checking the door and windows as if expecting punishment for eating. "Emma, you are safe here with me," I assured her. "You can tell me anything, and I will not be mad. I promise." She looked at me with those solemn eyes that had seen too much for a 5-year-old. "Daddy says I am not supposed to talk about our special rules." "Those rules do not apply when Daddy is away," I said carefully. "And they should never make you feel scared or sad." That afternoon, I made a critical mistake. Trying to show Emma that food could be enjoyable, I prepared one of the meals listed on her hospital-approved diet chicken soup with rice. What I did not know was that this was the same meal Jack had been insisting she eat at home before her hospitalization. The moment I set the bowl in front of her, Emma's face went white. She began to hyperventilate, pushing herself back from the table so violently that her chair toppled over. "No, please," she gasped between sobs. "Not that one. Please, not that one." I quickly removed the soup and held her trembling body close. "It is okay, Emma. You do not have to eat it. I am so sorry." It took nearly an hour to calm her down. When she finally stopped crying, she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Daddy puts bad things in that soup," she whispered. "It makes my tummy hurt and tastes like burning." My blood ran cold. What had Jack been doing to his own daughter? While Emma napped, exhausted from her emotional outburst, I searched Jack's home office. Most of the drawers in his desk were unlocked and contained ordinary office supplies and work documents. But one cabinet had a small padlock securing it. Using a hairpin, I managed to pick the simple lock, a skill left over from my rebellious teenage years. Inside, I found a shocking collection of items. A small digital camera contained dozens of photos of Emma looking frightened at mealtimes, her face tear-stained as she stared at various plates of food. A notebook documented what appeared to be some twisted form of behavioral conditioning, with entries like Day 12. Subject still resisting modified food. Increased consequence duration to 45 minutes. Most disturbing of all was a folder containing printed articles about childhood obedience training and behavior modification through negative reinforcement. Sections about using controlled discomfort to create compliant behavior were highlighted in yellow. My hands shook as I carefully returned everything, exactly as I had found it, and relocked the cabinet. The man I had married, the man I had allowed into my life and trusted with my heart, was systematically torturing his own child under the guise of parenting. That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, I gently broached the subject again. "Emma, can you tell me more about the special things Daddy puts in your food?" She curled into herself, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "He says it makes me a good girl. That sometimes food needs to taste bad so I learn to be good even when things are hard. Has he been doing this for a long time?" She nodded. "Since I came to live with you. He says if I tell anyone about our special meals, he will know I am a bad girl who cannot be trusted." "You are not bad, Emma," I said fiercely. "You are a good, brave girl, and what Daddy is doing is wrong." Later that night, I found myself unable to sleep. My mind raced with fragments of information, trying to piece together the full picture of Jack's abuse. I remembered Stephanie's words about objecting to his disciplinary tactics, and suddenly recalled a conversation from early in our relationship. Jack had mentioned his first wife, Emily, had left him over parenting disagreements before Emma was born. At the time, I had sympathized with him, assuming his ex was unreasonable. Now I wondered if Emily had seen the same dark tendencies I was discovering, and fled before having children with him. My phone lit up with a text from Jack. "How are things at home? Emma eating her dinner properly?" The casual message carried an undercurrent of menace that made me shudder. I carefully crafted a response that would not raise his suspicions. "Everything fine. Following meal plan exactly. Emma had chicken soup for dinner." His response came immediately. "Good. Make sure she finishes all of it tomorrow night too." I turned off my phone, feeling physically ill. Jack expected me to continue his pattern of abuse in his absence. Whatever he was putting in Emma's food, he wanted it to continue while he was away. The next morning, Emma seemed slightly more relaxed, accepting a small bowl of cereal for breakfast. As we sat together drawing pictures afterward, she began to talk more openly. "Kylie," she said, "using my name for the first time since moving in, can I tell you about the bad food?" My heart raced, but I kept my voice calm. "Of course you can, sweetie. You can tell me anything. Daddy says it makes me stronger, but it makes my mouth and tummy hurt," she confided. "Sometimes it is bitter, like when I accidentally tasted coffee. Sometimes it burns like fire." "Does he put something in all your food?" I asked. She shook her head. "Only at home. Not at restaurants or when other people are visiting. And only in my food. Not in yours or his." "When did this start, Emma?" "After Mommy got sick, and I came to live here," she said. "Daddy said you knew about it, that you agreed I needed to learn to be good." Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought you were pretending to be nice to test me." The realization that Jack had been using me as part of his psychological torture of Emma made me physically ill. No wonder she had been so afraid of me at first. Jack had positioned me as a knowing accomplice to her abuse. "Emma, I never knew," I told her, fighting back my own tears. "I would never, ever want you to eat anything that hurts you or tastes bad. I promise I did not know." She studied my face carefully, then did something that broke my heart open. She reached out and took my hand, a gesture of trust she had never offered before. Over the next day, I created a game called Safe Food, where Emma could help prepare simple meals and taste each ingredient before it went into the final dish. This small measure of control seemed to reassure her, and she began to eat more consistently, though still in very small amounts. As her trust in me grew, Emma revealed more details about Jack's special meals. He would prepare her food separately, adding substances that made it taste bitter, sour, or painfully spicy. If she refused to eat, he would force her to sit at the table for hours, sometimes well into the night. If she tried to discard the food or hide it, her punishment would be even more severe. "He makes me eat double bad food the next day," she whispered. "And he says, if I tell anyone, even you, he will know I cannot be trusted, and will have to send me away to a special school for bad children, where I would never see him or you or Mommy ever again." I began documenting everything Emma told me, recording our conversations on my phone with her permission, careful to store the files in a secure app Jack would not be able to access through his spyware. Together, we examined Emma's hiding places around the house, all the spots where she had been concealing the bad food when she could not force herself to eat it, under her bed, behind the bookcase, in the back of her closet. Each location contained evidence of Jack's abuse. Bits of bread crusted with a white powder, apple slices soaked in what smelled like vinegar, pasta that burned my tongue when I touched it to the tip of my tongue. I carefully collected samples of everything, placing them in plastic bags and hiding them in my tampons box, the one place I was certain Jack would never look. That afternoon, while searching for more evidence, I found Jack's journal hidden inside a hollowed-out business book on his office shelf. The contents were even more disturbing than what I had discovered in his locked cabinet. Jack had been documenting what he called his parental guidance techniques for years, starting even before Emma was born. The journal detailed his theories about creating obedient children through what he called consequence conditioning. He wrote about his disappointment when his first wife, Emily, had failed to understand the importance of early behavioral foundation and left him before they could have children. When Stephanie began objecting to his methods with Emma, he had systematically worked to portray her as unstable and unfit, eventually gaining custody through what appeared to be manipulated evidence and testimony from colleagues who owed him favors. Most chilling were his notes about me. Kylie shows promise as a parental partner. Her eagerness to be accepted by Emma creates a useful dynamic for reinforcing consequences. When Emma sees Kylie as complicit, it eliminates her as a potential confidant. He had been grooming me from the beginning, selecting me specifically because I wanted so badly to be a good stepmother that I might overlook warning signs in my desperation to make our family work. As the day of Jack's return approached, Emma became increasingly anxious. The progress we had made began to reverse, with her again refusing food and jumping at small noises. "Is Daddy really coming home tomorrow?" she asked repeatedly, fear evident in her voice. "Yes, sweetie, but things are going to be different," I assured her, though I had not yet figured out exactly how I would protect her. That night, Emma had a particularly severe nightmare, waking up screaming and inconsolable. I rushed to her room to find her sitting upright in bed, her small body rigid with terror. "He was making me eat the burning soup," she sobbed as I held her. "And when I said no, he said he was going to send me away forever." As I rocked her back to sleep, I made a decision. No matter what it took, I would not allow Jack near Emma ever again. I would find a way to protect her, even if it meant risking everything. After Emma fell back asleep, I began researching emergency custody procedures on my phone, using an incognito browser that would not be tracked by Jack's spyware. I also looked up domestic violence shelters in nearby counties where Jack might not think to look for us. My phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was Jack. "Change of plans," he said without preamble. "I am catching an earlier flight. I will be home this afternoon instead of tomorrow." My blood ran cold. Oh, that is great news. I forced myself to say with false enthusiasm. Emma will be so happy. How has she been eating? His tone was casual, but I knew what he was really asking. Following the meal plan exactly, I said carefully. Good. Make sure she has the chicken soup for lunch today. I will be checking when I get home. The moment we hung up, I knew our time had run out. Jack was coming home early because he sensed something was wrong. Perhaps my text messages had not been convincing enough. Or maybe he had accessed the home security cameras remotely and seen how relaxed Emma had become in his absence. I woke Emma gently and explained that we needed to have an important talk before her daddy came home. Emma, remember when you said Daddy puts bad things in your food? I asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. She nodded, her eyes wide. Can you tell me everything about that? I promise you are not in trouble, and I promise I will keep you safe. Emma sat cross-legged on her bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit tightly to her chest. For a long moment, she just stared at me, fear and uncertainty warring in her eyes. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she began to speak. Daddy says I have to learn to be good even when things are hard, she said. He says some children are born bad inside, and he has to fix them so they can be good. I kept my expression neutral despite the horror rising within me, not wanting to frighten her into silence. What does he do to fix the bad? He puts special medicine in my food, she continued. Sometimes it tastes like soap. Sometimes it is burning hot like fire. Sometimes it makes my whole mouth feel numb and yucky. Her lower lip trembled. If I do not eat it all, I have to sit at the table until I do, even if it is all night long, and if I try to hide it or throw it away, the next meal is double bad. I took out my phone and quietly started recording, making sure Emma could see what I was doing. Is it okay if I record what you are telling me? It might help us keep you safe. She nodded and continued, her small voice growing steadier as she spoke. Daddy says, if I tell anyone about our special meals, even you, it proves I am a bad girl who cannot be trusted with secrets. He says they will take me away to a place for bad children where no one will ever visit me, and I will never see you or Mommy again. Did he say I knew about this? About the bad food? Emma nodded, tears filling her eyes. He said you agreed that I needed to learn, that you were watching to see if I could be good enough to stay. A single tear slid down her cheek. I thought you were pretending to be nice sometimes to test me. The depth of Jack's psychological manipulation was staggering. He had not only been physically abusing Emma by forcing her to consume harmful substances, but he had been emotionally torturing her by making her believe I was part of the abuse. Emma, I never knew, I said firmly, taking her small hands in mine. I promise you, I never ever agreed to him hurting you. I would never want anyone to make you eat something that tasted bad or made you sick. You promise? She asked, searching my face. I promise with all my heart. And I am going to make sure he never hurts you again. But how? Daddy is very strong, and he gets very angry. I'm going to call some people who help keep children safe, I explained. They have more power than Daddy does. Like police officers? She asked. Yes, exactly like police officers. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Flight landed early. Be home in about an hour. My heart raced. We had less time than I thought. Emma, what kinds of things does Daddy put in your food? Do you know what they are called? She thought for a moment. I heard him on the phone once telling someone about something called quinine that he was getting from work. He said it was perfect because it was so bitter, but would not show up in tests. I felt physically ill. Quinine, once used for malaria, was known for its incredibly bitter taste. Jack worked for a pharmaceutical company. He would have easy access to various substances. He also uses hot sauce, the really, really hot kind, Emma continued. And sometimes this white powder that makes my tongue feel fuzzy and numb. Does he keep these things somewhere special? She nodded vigorously. In his work bag, in a special case with his name on it. I saw him put things in my food from there. I squeezed her hand gently. Emma, what you just told me was very brave. You are not bad. You have never been bad. What your daddy has been doing is wrong, and it is not your fault. She looked at me with such hope it nearly broke my heart. Can you make it stop? Yes, I promised. I will make it stop today. My phone rang suddenly, Jack's name flashing on the screen. I stepped into the hallway to answer it. "Hey, just got in the cab," he said, his voice unnervingly cheerful. "How is my girl doing with her lunch? Make sure she finishes all of the soup." "Everything is fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We are just having a quiet morning." "Good. See you in about 45 minutes. The moment I hung up, I knew we had to act quickly. Jack would be home soon, and once he arrived, the window of opportunity would close. "Emma, I need you to show me where Daddy keeps his special case right now, okay?" She led me to Jack's closet and pointed to his work briefcase. Inside, I found a small aluminum case with a combination lock. "Do you know the code?" I asked. Emma shook her head. I examined the case carefully. The lock was a simple 3-digit combination, and the aluminum was thin. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed a letter opener from Jack's desk and jimmied the lock until it popped open. Inside were several small bottles and packages, each neatly labeled in Jack's precise handwriting. Quinine sulfate, capsaicin extract, denatonium benzoate, one of the most bitter substances known to exist. There were also various powders and liquids I did not recognize. I carefully closed the case, took photos of everything inside, and placed it back exactly as I had found it. "Emma, I need to make a very important phone call now," I told her, leading her back to her room. "While I do that, can you put some of your favorite clothes and toys in your backpack? We might need to go somewhere for a little while." As Emma packed, I stepped into the bathroom and called 911, keeping my voice low. "I need to report ongoing child abuse," I told the dispatcher. "My husband has been forcing his 5-year-old daughter to consume harmful substances as punishment. She has been hospitalized for malnutrition. He is returning home in less than an hour, and I fear for her safety and mine." While I was still on the phone with the dispatcher, another call came through Jack again. "Ignore it," I told the dispatcher. "That is him calling. He monitors my phone." "Ma'am, officers are on their way to your address now," the dispatcher assured me. "Please stay on the line if possible." I quickly texted Jack. "Sorry, in the shower. See you soon." Then I returned to the emergency call. The dispatcher asked me to stay in the house if it was safe to do so, as officers were only minutes away. I agreed, gathering Emma's medical records, my recordings of her statements, and photos of the hidden food and Jack's case of substances. "Kylie!" Emma called from her room, her voice tight with panic. "Daddy's car is here." My blood turned to ice. Jack was home far earlier than he had said, catching us unprepared. I rushed to Emma's room and gathered her into my arms. "Listen to me, Emma," I said urgently. "No matter what happens next, remember that you are brave and good, and none of this is your fault. I am going to keep you safe." The front door opened, and Jack's voice called out with chilling cheerfulness. "Hello, I am home," I whispered to Emma. "Stay in your room with the door closed, until I come get you, or a police officer comes, okay? Do not come out no matter what you hear." She nodded, her eyes wide with fear. As I closed her bedroom door, Jack appeared at the top of the stairs, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Well, this is a surprise," he said. "I thought you would both be in the kitchen, having lunch." "Emma was not feeling well," I said, forcing my voice to remain casual. "I let her rest a bit before lunch." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is that so? Let me check on her." He moved toward Emma's door, but I stepped in his way. "She just fell asleep. Let her rest." His face hardened. "Move aside, Kylie." "No." The single word hung between us, changing everything. In our entire relationship, I had never directly refused him before. Jack's mask of normalcy dropped completely. "I see," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "You have been busy while I was away. What exactly have you been telling my daughter?" "I have not been telling her anything, Jack. She told me everything. About the special meals, about the bitter medicine, about how you threaten to send her away if she tells anyone." His face contorted with rage. "You had no right to interfere with my parenting." "Poisoning a child is not parenting," I said, standing my ground despite my pounding heart. "It is abuse." Jack lunged forward suddenly, grabbing my arm with bruising force. "You ungrateful bitch. After everything I have done for you, bringing you into our lives, giving you a family." Through the window behind him, I saw a police car pulling up to our house, and relief flooded through me. "It is over, Jack," I said. "The police are here." He spun around to look out the window, his grip on my arm loosening just enough for me to pull away. In that moment, Emma's door opened, and she stepped into the hallway, her small face determined despite her fear. "I told Kylie everything, Daddy," she said in a shaking voice. "About the bad food and the punishments. I am not bad inside, you are." Jack stared at his daughter in shock, then turned to me with pure hatred. "You turned my own child against me. You will regret this." The doorbell rang, followed by a loud knock. "Police, open up." Jack's eyes darted around like a trapped animal's. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might become violent, but instead he straightened his posture and smoothed his expression into one of puzzled concern. "This is all a misunderstanding," he said calmly. "I will explain everything to them." As he turned to go downstairs, I grabbed Emma and held her close. "It is going to be okay now," I whispered into her hair. "I promise." When Jack opened the door, 2 police officers stood on our porch, hands near their weapons. "Mr. Hamilton?" one of them asked. "Yes, officer. How can I help you?" "We received a report of child endangerment at this address. We need to speak with everyone in the home." Jack's smile was confident as he stepped aside. "Of course. There must be some mistake, but please come in." I walked downstairs with Emma, my arm protectively around her shoulders. When the officers saw us, their expressions softened at the sight of Emma's thin frame and frightened eyes. "Mrs. Hamilton?" the female officer asked. I nodded. "And this must be Emma," she said gently, kneeling down to Emma's level. "Hi there." Emma pressed herself against my side but managed a tiny wave. "Officers," Jack said smoothly. "I have just returned from a business trip to find my wife in some kind of paranoid state. She has been under a lot of stress lately, adapting to parenthood." "That is not true," I said firmly. "I have evidence of ongoing abuse." I held up my phone. "I have recordings of Emma describing how he forces her to eat food laced with bitter substances as punishment. I have photographs of the chemicals he uses, hidden in a case in his briefcase. And I have samples of the contaminated food Emma hid, rather than eating." Jack laughed dismissively. "This is absurd. My daughter has been having some eating issues, yes. We just had her in the hospital for malnutrition. The doctors can verify that we have been following their meal plan carefully." "Emma," the female officer said gently, "can you tell me about your meals at home?" Emma looked up at me, and I nodded encouragingly. "It is okay to tell the truth, sweetheart." In a small but clear voice, Emma told the officers about the special meals that tasted bitter or burning, about having to sit at the table all night if she refused to eat, about the threats to send her away if she told anyone. While she spoke, the male officer discreetly stepped behind Jack. I realized they were positioning themselves to prevent him from fleeing or becoming violent. "Mr. Hamilton, we are going to need you to come with us to the station to answer some questions," the male officer said when Emma finished speaking. Jack's charming facade cracked. "This is ridiculous. You are going to take the word of a confused 5-year-old? She has been manipulated by my wife, who clearly wants to take my daughter away from me." "Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back," the officer said firmly. "On what charges?" Jack demanded, his voice rising. "Child endangerment, to start with," the officer replied. "More charges may follow after investigation." "This is a mistake," Jack insisted as the officer handcuffed him. "I am a respected member of this community. I will have your badges for this." As they led Jack to the police car, he locked eyes with me one last time. "This is not over," he mouthed silently. But it was over. The moment the police car pulled away, Emma turned to me and did something she had never done before. She threw her arms around my waist and hugged me tight. "Is he really gone?" she whispered against my stomach. "Yes," I said, kneeling down to hold her properly. "And I promise you, he cannot hurt you anymore." The days and weeks following Jack's arrest were a blur of police interviews, medical examinations, and meetings with Child Protective Services. The evidence against Jack was overwhelming. Laboratory analysis of the food samples I had collected confirmed the presence of multiple bitter and irritating substances, including quinine, capsaicin, and denatonium. The aluminum case from Jack's briefcase contained not just these chemicals, but detailed records of his discipline program, including dosages that increased over time and notes on Emma's reactions. His own meticulous documentation became the most damning evidence against him. Emma was temporarily placed in my care under CPS supervision. The caseworker, Miss Patterson, was initially skeptical of my role in the situation. "You lived in the home for months," she pointed out during our first meeting. "How did you not notice this abuse earlier?" Jack was incredibly manipulative, I explained. He convinced medical professionals, teachers, even his own mother, that Emma's eating issues were psychological, related to the transition of moving in with us. He made sure that Emma's fear kept her from telling me what was happening, and he positioned me as part of the abuse without my knowledge. As the investigation progressed, Miss Patterson's skepticism faded. Interviews with hospital staff revealed how skillfully Jack had manipulated the narrative, and review of the nanny cam footage showed the stark contrast between his behavior when he thought he was being observed and when he was not. During this time, I also connected with Stephanie, Emma's biological mother, who had recently completed her rehabilitation program for depression. Far from the unstable addict Jack had described, Stephanie was a thoughtful, caring woman who had been systematically isolated from her daughter through Jack's manipulation of the legal system. "He always seemed so reasonable, so concerned," Stephanie told me over coffee 2 weeks after Jack's arrest. "He convinced the judge that my seeking treatment for depression after my mother died was evidence of instability. He had colleagues testify that I was erratic, neglectful. By the time I realized what was happening, he had full custody, and I was allowed only supervised visits." Together, Stephanie and I began building a support system for Emma. We coordinated with therapists specialized in childhood trauma, nutritionists who understood the psychological aspects of disordered eating, and child advocates who helped Emma understand that she was not at fault for any of what had happened. 3 months after Jack's arrest, Emma had gained 5 pounds. Her hair was growing in thicker, her eyes brighter. The nightmares still came, but less frequently, and she was slowly learning to trust food again. The legal proceedings against Jack moved forward with surprising speed, thanks in part to the meticulous evidence I had gathered. When faced with the overwhelming case against him, Jack accepted a plea deal that included significant prison time and permanent loss of parental rights. On the day of his sentencing, I sat in the courtroom next to Stephanie, both of us there to ensure justice for Emma, who was safely at school, unaware of the proceedings. Jack looked nothing like the confident, charming man I had married. His designer suits had been replaced by prison orange, his carefully styled hair grown out and unkempt. When given the opportunity to speak, he offered no apology. No recognition of the harm he had caused, only a cold statement about his right to raise his child as he saw fit. The judge was unmoved. "Mr. Hamilton, the court finds your actions against your daughter to be not just criminal but monstrous. You systematically tortured a child who depended on you for love and protection, using your professional knowledge to inflict suffering while avoiding detection. You manipulated healthcare professionals, the legal system, and your own family to enable your abuse." Jack was sentenced to 12 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 8 years, along with permanent termination of all parental rights. As we left the courthouse, Stephanie squeezed my hand. "I never thought I would see him face consequences," she said, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for saving our daughter." Our daughter? The phrase struck me deeply. In the months since Jack's arrest, Stephanie and I had formed an unlikely alliance, bound by our shared love for Emma and determination to help her heal. 6 months after Jack's sentencing, Emma was thriving. With consistent therapy and the security of knowing she was truly safe, she had developed into a chatty, energetic kindergartner who loved art and stories. She split her time between my home and Stephanie's apartment, an arrangement that provided her with stability while allowing both of us to be present in her life. One warm spring afternoon, Emma and I were planting a small vegetable garden in my backyard. As she carefully patted soil around a tiny tomato plant, she looked up at me thoughtfully. "Kylie," she said, using the name she still preferred for me, I have been thinking about something important. What is that, sweetheart? I asked, wiping a smudge of dirt from her cheek. You are my real mom, she said, with the simple clarity of a child stating an obvious truth. Not because you married my daddy, or because I live with you sometimes, but because you saved me when I needed saving. Tears filled my eyes as I pulled her into a gentle hug. Oh, Emma. My therapist says it is okay to have two real moms, she continued matter-of-factly. She says families can look lots of different ways as long as there is love and safety. Your therapist is very wise, I agreed, amazed at how resilient children could be when given the chance to heal. Can we make salad with our vegetables when they grow? Emma asked, already moving on to the next thought. I think I might like salad now. We can make anything you want, I promised. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat on my porch reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. I thought about the red flags I had missed in my relationship with Jack, the subtle ways he had isolated me and undermined my confidence. I thought about how easy it is to dismiss a child's behavior as adjustment or defiance, rather than recognizing it as communication. Most of all, I thought about the importance of trusting your instincts. From the beginning, something had felt wrong about Emma's situation, but I had allowed Jack's manipulation and my own self-doubt to silence that inner voice. Emma's recovery was not complete, and perhaps never would be entirely. The trauma she had endured would always be part of her story. But she was healing, growing stronger every day, surrounded by people who were committed to her well-being. As for me, I was learning to trust myself again, to recognize the strength that had allowed me to stand up to Jack and protect Emma when it mattered most. I was building a new definition of family, one based on love, respect, and the fierce determination to protect those who cannot protect themselves. 1 year after Jack's arrest, Emma's therapist confirmed what we had begun to see for ourselves: our little girl was going to be okay. With continued support and the stable, loving environment we were providing, she would grow up to be a healthy, whole person, capable of trust and joy, despite her early trauma. You know, Emma said to me recently as we prepared dinner together, something she now enjoyed doing, I used to think that bad things in food made me a bad person, but now I know that is not true. What do you know now? I asked, watching her carefully slice a banana. She looked up at me with those wise eyes that had seen too much, yet somehow retained their innocence. I know that food is just food, and I am just me. And being me is exactly right. Out of all the lessons from our painful journey, perhaps that was the most important one. Sometimes the people who should protect us cause the deepest harm. Sometimes family is found in unexpected places. And sometimes the most powerful act of love is simply believing someone when they tell you they are hurting. If you are reading this and something feels wrong in your home or in the life of a child you know, please trust that feeling. Look deeper, ask questions, stand firm. Be the person who notices, who listens, who acts. Because sometimes, being that person makes all the difference between suffering and salvation. Have you ever noticed warning signs in a situation that others dismissed? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize a situation that needs intervention. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Together, we can be more vigilant in protecting the vulnerable among us. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always find the courage to speak up when it matters most.